Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Deepa Karthikeyan. I'm part of an organization called Athena Infonomics. We're one among several organizations that's going to be presenting and sharing here today. When we sort of conceptualize this, in our heads, we were visualizing a small group that's just sitting in a circle, right? Like we're going to do the fishbowl approach, and we're going to just like have a conversation and be super free flowing about it. Obviously, we couldn't get to any of those ambitions. I'm going to, however, try and do my best to engage, right? So I want to, because we wanted to break the sort of panel audience hierarchy because there's just so much experience and wisdom and ideas in the room. And I think we don't want to leave this with, oh, we have 4 presentations and then just with a simple Q&A and presentation structure. I'll try and do my best today, along with my colleagues, to try and facilitate sort of more of a conversation and kick us off. We do have some presentations, but the idea is to keep that to maybe ideally under 30 minutes so that we have as much time to hear from everyone in the room and to exchange ideas. I want to let's start with what we're not going to do, right? I know the title says tools. I'm sure, show of hands, how many of you are just tired of presentations on tools? Great. So this is an enthusiastic audience then. This is awesome. That's a great start. I usually get a lot of hands for that. So that's awesome. But what we don't want to do is just market tools, right? We don't want to come here and say, here's our tool. Take a look at it. Please use it. I think we obviously want to, there are going to be tools, but the vision is to hear, because from the folks here in the room and what your experience is, to get critical feedback on what works, what are your priorities. We're also not here to pitch software, right? So we're not selling software. We don't want to pitch a particular software to you. That's not the vision. But we want to talk about systems, right? Not software. We want to talk about why everybody loves data. Everybody wants data, but we don't get to it enough in the context of the utilities that we set up and manage, and so the question is, why is that, right? And sort of almost lead with this provocation, right? Which is, even if there is some data, we don't necessarily use it, do we, right? I am sure, and I know there are, raise of hands, how many folks from water utilities in the room who are part of water utilities? Awesome. So good to see lots of friends and familiar faces too. Okay, so I'm sure literally every agency or water utility that's here has some data, right? Like you have some system that is active, you're generating data, but are you using it? And I think one of the most common questions and conversations I lead with when we talk about this is billing and billing softwares, right? Pretty much every water utility I worked with has a billing software. But how many utilities actually look at the data from their billing software and then segment their customers and say, oh, these customers are more likely to be delinquent versus these customers, are actually paying really well. So maybe I give some incentives or I engage with these customers differently. And we don't see that happening. And therefore, this is not a technology conversation, right? Because if technology could fix it, we would have fixed it. It's about trust, it's about incentives, it's about habits. And really, those are the kinds of things we want to think about and focus on in the conversation today. So when we think about data, what do we think about, right? The value chain, obviously, you first need good data. That means you're investing in operational systems around assets, around customers, around finances that's generating the data that you need to run your day-to-day operations. And then you need to analyze this data, right? Because you could have lots of really cool softwares that generates lots of great information, but these information sits in silos, they sit in a lot of different places, It's just too complicated, two different softwares don't interact with one another, the API calls are hard, or you just have lots of different spreadsheets sitting on lots of different computers. And you actually need to analyze it, and then you need to think about it, integrate it into your decision making, and finally think about what kind of impact that's delivering. And this is ideally what we want to see. But we all know that in practice, there are lots of leakages, right? The data itself could be incomplete or missing, or it's collected but just not analyzed. It just sits in different spreadsheets like I described before. Or there's some kind of analysis that gets done, but decision makers don't trust it, right? You put the information out and then they're like, we don't trust this. We don't trust where this data is coming from, because data is politics and data is political. If you disagree, I'd love to hear from you. Go.
It's basically, well, my experience in 32 years, many times, the story the data tells is not a story which anybody wants to hear, okay? So that's why it's not act upon it. And the lack of discipline, it's always similar. I'm talking about working more than 40 countries. And it's always similar, The data is not welcome, It's like a gate crasher in a party, Nobody wants to see it because it tells a story which nobody wants to hear. So, sorry, unless this is finally addressed, we can go on and on and on and on. And it's not updated. It's not, you can install a system. It's not updated because, it's not wanted for some reason.
And so you are?
Germany. No, I'm a consultant. I worked with many utilities in many countries, trying to, reduce non-revenue water, billing efficiency, willingness to pay, and it's mostly, sorry to be so blunt, it's always a similar story. Like the patient has always a similar disease, but it's the lack of a political will to raise the tariffs, to make it work. It looks like, there is a certain input from the outside, and as soon as this input is gone, it goes down. So, sorry to be so.
No, but I think this is exactly the kind of conversation we also want to have, right? So let's unpack that, because there's two parts to this, and I've heard this a lot, right? Data is politics. We don't want to hear the data. We look at data. It's telling us a story that's scaring us. In fact, operating in this gray is very convenient, right? Because then I can tell the story I want to tell. I can tell the banks the story that I think will help me get the concessional loan. I can tell my customers the story that I think will help me get off with my politicians. And I think that there is something, and what's interesting though, within that narrative, and that's worth unpacking, is you don't even know what you can and cannot say unless you have a culture of working with data in the first place, right? And there are lots of things that you can do that isn't as politically complicated, right? Billing data is a really good example, right, to begin with, because a utility wants to make money or save money, loosely, right? Oversimplifying, right? So if they want to save money or make money, there are lots of things that they can do that can get them to that goal of saving money or making money, which is not political. And you don't even know what that space looks like unless you work with data. And I think there is an argument to be made. But yeah, and we'll spend more time talking about it. This goes back to what you said. And then, do we have good examples, right? And one of the biggest things we've talked about is, where has data made people's lives better, right? Like, where has it had an impact? Are there enough stories to say when they invested in those, acoustic sticks and collected leakage data and got better at collecting a lot more data, they actually brought down non-revenue water by X amount, and this was fantastic, and they saved a lot of money, right? So we need more stories on impact, and I think there are all leakages here. So today, what we have is we have a couple of presentations. As I said, we have an ambitious target for ourselves of keeping it to under 30 minutes. I'm going to try and moderate to make sure we stick to that. We have three sort of sets of presentations today. The first is we have the World Bank, the International Water Association, talking about two of their initiatives. One is called IBNet, the new IBNet, which several of you in this room are probably already familiar with, right? What is it? It's a benchmarking platform, right? It essentially provides a reference point for what kind of data one needs to be thinking about, and provides a tool that allows utilities to share data. So we'll have a presentation on that, and we have Faustina from Ghana Water in the room. Faustina, Awesome, Faustina, great. Who will share your experience of how you've engaged, right? Because again, let's deal with the truth. No, benchmarking is not easy. Even the World Bank, that provides concessional finance, hasn't gotten utilities to share data as part of the benchmark. It is a nightmare. Because this is like saying, oh, you may not have the right data, but listen, you know what? If you need to get this loan, I need to see some of this data. So figure out how you're going to put it on that platform. And if the World Bank is struggling to get utilities, even though there's a direct concessional finance incentive, there's something deeper that we need to talk about and unpack. The second presentation is from Paris Tech, Paris Tech, which is going to talk about an initiative they have that's focusing on something that's fascinating, which is how do you build cultures of data use, right? And they have like a program that they've set up, and we have Samaun who's joining us from Phnom Penh in Cambodia who will share his experience on how that's worked. And then finally, Musa from Afwasa and I will tag team to share a little bit about this initiative called the Africa Utility Data Collaborative that gets to some of these questions of data use. So we have 3 presentations, all ideally under 10 minutes. I'm going to hand it off, of course, to Anna to talk about IBNet. Anna, over to you.
Thank you. Every time I present, I realize I only have 2 hands and always 3 things to hold. Who in the room is working for the World Bank? Okay. As consultants or as a... Right, okay. So I must know how free I can talk in here. Myself, not directly employed by the bank. I am currently responsible for the World Bank project that is called the IBNet. IBNet is nothing new. It's the international benchmarking network that existed for 20 years. So many utilities are familiar with it, especially consultants are familiar with it. It has been the largest database of utility performance data for so many years, but who has used it? Utilities never tell me that they have ever used it. They tell me how consultants came by, picked up some data, and then landed on IBNet. But then, yeah, that's a dead repository of a lot of data that we could work with. And this is where the new IBNet came in. And 3 to 4 years ago, it was relaunched. It was redesigned to become a tool for utilities to use internally for their own benchmarking, for benchmarking over time against themselves, to track performance, but also as basically this tool where, especially for example, a capital city might want to compare rather to another capital city than some smaller utilities within the country. Now, for new IBNet, I would like to call it a startup because I've been working for IBNet now for 2 years, and we're kind of in our baby shoes when it comes to utilities using it for their internal use of what I just said. We're offering this tool. We see a vision where this can be of great help, and I'd love to get some very honest input later from some utilities who are already using it. But still, the data set now is still comparably not as large as it used to be. So what do we offer under this tool? We say less is more. The amount of data that has to be collected, the amount of time that has to be put in, it always showed to be a hurdle. So here we collect raw data for only the 15 most relevant key performance indicators to create a standard in the world where we say, okay, at least these 15 KPIs can be compared internationally. Second innovation was a self-assessment, and for the first time ever, a benchmarking across management practices. What are management practices? It's the how, why, how you run your operations. So it's not just what's my non-revenue water and that's it, but how did it come to that? What are you doing internally to actually operate your utility? This is a self-assessment, but this is also compared from utility to utility or on a country level, aggregated on national level, yeah. So we then also on new IBNet introduced a community aspect to this because, okay, great. I saw Sofia Water as a capital city of Bulgaria did worse or better than Tirana Water in Albania, but as a utility staff employee, I see their performance, I see they're doing better than me, and then what? I want to talk to them. I want to know why. I want to interact with these people. So what is behind IBNet is once you've uploaded your data, you've seen your benchmarking results, you go to the community space and you actually contact the focal point of that utility that has imported data from their side. And finally, at some point, we are at a critical point now where we do have enough data to start generating first analysis of the database, and we want to give something back, insights. What does the data on a greater scale tell us? This is all available for utilities free of charge. Please have a look. This is what it would look like once you're logged in as a utility. You can select the utilities you want to compare against, and then you see for the 15 indicators where do the others stand, does the colored dots, and where is 50% of utility performance ranging. You can do that for single performance indicators, and you can do that for the management practices. Now, we also talked about incentives, and data itself and the results it gives, and thank you for the input, is never interesting enough, because these stories, apparently no one wants to hear them, but this is why, together with IWA, with the International Water Association, we've come up with this incentive, with this reward system where we say there's something in it for you, and once you import data, once you talk to others, once you get to the networking part, especially in person, then it will show the greatness. Ideally, that's the long-term vision. So please scan the QR code. There's a deadline this Friday. If you still upload your utility data by then, we reward 5 to 7 participants to go attend the IWA Congress in Bangkok this December.
A vacation to Bangkok. Like, you know, that's a nice incentive. Thank you so much, Anna. No, thank you. I do want to, I know we have a presentation online that's coming up next from our colleagues at the IWA to talk a little bit building on really how they're building a program around data and how that's going to help us. I think climate creates a whole new layer of complexity because suddenly historical data becomes less significant because you don't know how to model with that to predict what's likely to happen. It introduces greater uncertainty, but we want to hear more from the IWA to share a little bit about what they're doing. And then Faustina, it'll be great to hear from you on really how Ghana Water has both engaged and benefited. And also, if you have some constructive criticism, we'd love to hear that too, Faustina. But maybe first over to nobody online? Okay, so we're going to then go straight to Faustina to tell us, maybe Faustina, you can also cover ground and tell us a little bit about the Climate Smart program and also your experience as Ghana Water.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. From Ghana Water, we have a strong team here. My managing director is here. General Manager Operations is also here. So this tells you that Ghana Water is a strong proponent of the IBNet team. And we are also motivated to being recognized as a climate smart utility under the IWA program. We are talking about data here, and for our utility, we have been on this journey for a long time now. And as I mentioned, our recent recognition under the IWA program has been both an honor and a motivation. And it has helped us to really reflect deeply on how leadership, data, and resilience come together in driving real transformations for a utility. The question that we have been thinking about is, why do we struggle to build systems that generate high-quality data? From our experience, the struggle is that we don't have the data, as Deepa mentioned earlier. The data is there, from in-house systems to on-the-field equipment. We have data from our e-billing platform, data on operations and maintenance, data on customer service management, and the like. But then the issue is the data is sitting on silos. and sometimes we are not speaking to each other. In itself, we are functional. It is working very well when it comes to commercial services, operations, procurement. The data is working really functional, but then we are not aligned. The data is not aligned. And so when you want to add new assets to legacy systems, it becomes really challenging. So that is one major challenge that we face. The second challenge is how data is perceived. Historically, we see data as an administrative record, not a management system. And so when a customer care assistant is taking a meter reading, it thinks, well, I'm just taking the record. When I'm picking customer complaints, I'm just keeping the record. But then it goes beyond that. And so we need to look at that. So thirdly, we are looking at capacity and confidence. Many of our staff are excellent engineers, excellent managers, excellent water quality assistants. But we have not really built our capacity when it comes to data analysis. So in Ghana Water, my bosses are here. You find that we now have a data analytics program managed by a professor who is skilled and specialized in utility management and data analysis. And so we are now building the capacity of our staff when it comes to data analysis. And this is helping to improve revenue generation, improve customer service, and even when it comes to energy audit and all of that, we are using data to manage it because we are trying to upskill and make sure that we improve our confidence levels when it comes to data management. And finally, I will talk about data governance, which has been a major focus under the Climate Smart program. That is why I am standing here, because now we are defining data in terms of ownership, defining data in terms of standardizing reporting, and embedding accountability for data quality from all levels of our utility. So we are doing that. So for us, the real challenge isn't about data, it is about aligning the systems, the people, and then leadership so that data becomes a trusted asset for decision making. There's another part of the question. I don't know if I should go ahead. Okay, so what helps us advance cultures and the systems of data use? We believe that transformation happens when data stops being just a report and starts becoming a strategic tool. At Ghana Water, leadership commitment has been the biggest to-go thing. I mean, it is making the biggest difference. My MD is here. He will attest to it. Our managing director personally reviews district managers' performance. And so when district managers are coming for performance assessment, yeah. So district managers, for example, come for performance assessment with evidence, and so decisions are made transparently. It builds confidence and helps to improve sustainability within our business. So that is one thing we are doing. And then peer-to-peer learning, as has been mentioned earlier, through the IBNet community of practice, through AFWES's benchmarking programs, we look at what Uganda is doing well, what is Kenya doing well, what is happening in South Africa. When it comes to non-revenue PBCs, what is happening in other areas that we can pick examples, good examples, and learn from. So this is also helping to compare ourselves and to build fit-for-purpose tools that is helping us to really move forward. And then, of course, we are also boosting staff morale and visibility through what is working in districts, doing benchmarking amongst ourselves as a utility, and then advancing data about our various systems. We have an e-billing platform. We also have systems that we are using for operations and maintenance. We have SCADA tools and all of that. And Ghana Water is also a member of the IBNet program. So I think that is what I will talk about from our utility. We are learning, and then the successes that we are achieving, we are also sharing with other partners through our water operators partnership programs. Thank you very much.
That is amazing. And I think that's a really great sort of response to, I think, some of the cynicism, right? It's interesting, and I
Interesting to really understand what brought the turnaround, you know, assuming that it was not as good before and now it's better. So what actually made the change? You know?
leadership.
Leadership,
Yep.
Where did it come from?
And maybe do you want to react to that actually? Why did you start?
Thank you very much. I'm Honorable Adam Mutawakilu. I'm a politician, I'm not a technocrat. I was a district chief executive. I became a member of parliament for 8 years. And my expert is into oil and gas and power. You know, oil and gas and power is related to water. I always believe resource. And I'll follow up at every step to ensure that the right thing is done. Thankfully, I have my deputy managing director in charge of operations, Mr. Bochibedu, Michael Bochibedu here. He has worked with Ghana Water for over 30 years, and he's an engineer. So I tap a lot of knowledge from him and put the leadership skills. When we promise on something, I follow it up to the letter. If you are not performing, I will assess you whether I need to move you somewhere and bring another person there, looking at the sensitivity of your position. So we give you 3 months. We expect you to achieve this. If you are not able, we'll evaluate you, and we'll take the necessary action. It shouldn't be that type of, I can do whatever I want, and no action. No. So we have our milestones, and our monitor, I paste it on the office, or I have it on my laptop. Every day I monitor. We're expected to achieve this by the end of September. When we assess it and there's no performance, like September ending one staff, we agreed by September ending some meters, boundary meters should have been fixed. As at the end of September, no action. The next day is move out. A new person brought in. Then we made a follow-up. What do we do? Currently, they are being fixed. Every staff must know that if I don't perform, there will be an action. And as a result, it's not easy, but it seems we are moving in the right direction. And I'm a computer literate, so I like send me information electronically, and I can assess it and analyze it and take decision. And also I'm an accountant as well. I did my first degree in accounting.
Awesome. I feel like, this is fascinating, and thank you so much for that, right? And I think that because so many of the conversation rooms that I've been in where we talk about data, it often starts with, and I'll come to you, ma'am, in a minute, we have all these KPIs, the regulator needs these KPIs, the ministry. I think the conversation that I detest most is SDG reporting. And I'm going to say that on a UN platform, right? Because it is that narrative skews the whole, it creates this idea that you could send consultants in to somehow get some kind of data that sits on a platform, and that platform will somehow create accountability, will create conversation. We will say, you're doing so poorly, look at your JMP data. What has that changed at the level for the citizen living in that locality? What has it changed? And I think there's value. I'm not saying there's no value, but I think it's almost sort of like a monolithic way of thinking about data, right? And for me, my personal struggle in my professional journey has been, can we talk about data without thinking of it as something that needs to go sit on a UN dashboard for SDG reporting, or something that I need to give my regulator because, I'm not even going to have a but it's this. Your utility, you get better bonuses, your staff feel better, you're all collectively working towards maybe it also makes it easier to fight crises, right? Your quality of life improves and the utility performs better. And we don't have enough of those narratives, I think. And I think that narrative and the leadership role modeling and the fact that it is such an intrinsic internal journey around performance and value to the utility, and that's where the conversation should start, and that's where we should focus most of our efforts on, is I think something that that's very personal, something I find I'm passionate about. But did you want to come in? Did you want to add?
Thank you, everyone. It's a great honor to be here. I'm from Mongolia, the Millennium Challenge account. So we're here with our water utilities, OSNAG and OSOG with us. Now, recently, we're working to develop one of the data system for the consumer side, also water utilities. So I'm just curious about, is it possible that we connect two systems like real time, or how frequent that we need to input these KPIs like 15 ones? Then we might be looking at to connect these systems together, then we will be connected to internationally. That is my personal question. Is it possible? Yeah, thank you. My name is Tsitsuki.
Thank you very much for this question. It's exactly that what also actually Deepa mentioned in the beginning. Another hurdle that we often have is different softwares, different tools not working together. And then everyone's doing their own benchmarking. And, well, we're already delivering data to the regulator. We're already delivering data to our internal national program. Now you want to have it on an international level. And my very honest and blank answer, we're working on it, but we're not there yet. So, for example, what IBNet does is it allows for bulk data import. So if at least there's an existing system, we can look for, do you have all the data that we have, or vice versa? Then maybe adjusting it, individualizing it, adding something. We've done that in the past 3 years, I want to add. It's not that old. So in that case, the utilities only have to submit data once. So just to give an example, and because I haven't done it before, I haven't introduced myself. And I actually work for the International Association for Water Services in the Danube region. And there we also have a utility benchmarking program that goes across, actually the Danube Basin is the largest international river basin because it actually has 19 countries connected. So we have this regional benchmarking program where, for example, we make sure that when we collect data, we immediately also check for that the data that IBNet is asking for is also there, and we just forward it. So for the utility is a one-stop, but they have 2 returns. So in that sense, yes, if there's, for example, regulatory authorities in the room or other national associations who are doing some benchmarking, we can work together to get the data into IBNet, but we cannot yet automatically connect it.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna. And we can move the mic around. Is this also on IBNet? Or is it
It's about the 15 indicators.
Yeah, sure.
I'll take this and yeah, thank you. Emanuele Robina, PSIRU, University of Greenwich. PSIRU stands for Public Services International Research Unit. Now, thank you very much for this. I mean, of course, benchmarking and data can be used differently. And when I think about different perspectives, I mean, ideally, I think that those interested in improving governance and performance should be looking at benchmarking as the beginning of a conversation rather than the end of a conversation. And sometimes indicators can be a bit crude because they're not contextualized. And so the comparison misses that context. It is different from the perspective of a potential lender who is interested in some crude indicators about repayment and all that. So I was wondering whether the 15 indicators enable the kind of contextualization that would be ideal to improve governance and performance and sustainable reform, or whether they're more oriented towards the yes or no kind of decision making of a potential lender who is only interested in repayments across a certain period of time. Thank you.
I guess there's some people in the room who might have something to add to that, especially the utilities who are already working on that and how they perceive this. But from my perspective, where I represent IBNet, is from what we offer, is exactly that, to be honest. Because we've reduced the KPIs to these 15 ones to make it less, but to actually then have this community space around it where we talk about it. It's not about, like, as you said, it's a conversation starter. So it's where we always say, share, use, connect. Share your data, we give you your benchmarking dashboards in return, use them, and then connect with those who share the data. Because behind IBNet, when you, as an IBNet user, as a utility, you are automatically, as the focal point who imports the data, becoming part of an online space that works like some kind of social media. And you have a feed, but you also have events, you also have direct chat. So I could look at a utility and say, I looked at the performance of the Tirana water utility. Now let me go on the community space, find the focal point from Tirana water and send them a direct message. They would receive that on their email and then they can have a conversation. What we from our side provide in terms of context is the events that invite utilities to talk, like for example, when we look at the data, we see trends. And then we had, especially Ghana Water is always a utility that has more to share in terms of experience than to learn, I think. Ghana is always like one of our best practices that we put on the webinars. But in that sense, we make sure that this is a peer-to-peer exchange and not a World Bank staff talking for an hour event. And last but not least, what I would like to drag your attention to is this innovative part around the management practices, where we actually look at the context. So this is where, on management practices, we do look at commercial questions, or for example, what I like a lot is, I think I haven't seen this anywhere else, is for example, questions on human resources, and how do you promote staff, how do you actually operate internally, and more the questions that address the context rather than percentage or, yeah.
I just want to quickly just build on that one thing, and then I'm going to hand it off to Samaun to talk to us about NOMPEN, is it's very important, and I think this is where leadership role modeling and introspection is so important. If you look at the KPIs, it's a bank. A bank lends against certain kinds of asset classes. So when they're looking at performance, they're often looking for performance against those asset classes. So it's a certain kind of infrastructure lending. And if you reflect, sit back, and if you say 85% of my utility gets their drinking water from informal vendors in the form of sachets or water cans, my KPI is not non-revenue water because I don't even have piped infrastructure, right? I don't have, right? So if I spend all of my leadership real estate thinking about these KPIs only, I'm not going to support any serious significant reforms because this is what the World Bank is lending against. I think it's helpful. It's a very good reference point, and there's a lot of good information in terms of both quant and qualitative things. But it's, I think, a certain amount of introspection about your market reality, right? What is the context in which you are expected to deliver a service? What is your install capacity in terms of infrastructure, and how do you go from there? And I think there's something, and that comes with just leadership. It comes with the ability to ask the questions that matter, and then navigating the politics of it within those systems. With that, I'd love to hand it off now to Samaun, who's joining us from NOMPEN, to talk about the third initiative, which is KOPT. And yeah, over to you, Samaun, to tell us a little bit about that and tell us also about how you,
Hello, all right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity and having me here. And my name is Mon Serai Somanu. You would call me Samon in short. And I'm working for Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority in Phnom Penh for almost 8 years right now. And I'm here to share a first-hand experience from Asia and from our utility that it is one of the remarkable story, a turnaround that it is a story that perfectly illustrated this session theme. And we will see it is a story that where data and tools are only part of the equations. And so my presence here today is also in another capacity as one of the alumnus of WOPs class 2021 and 2022 in agroparistics. And this program is one of the powerful initiative. This session highlights it focused on a diagnostic leadership in water sectors, provided a strong methodological foundation from the work that we do at PPWSA. So my goal today is to bridge this academic tool-driven approach with one of the ground reality of the running on a large-scale utility that to share how we use this concept to build our strategy. And as you can see this slide, to understand our PPWSA strategy, you must first understand our history. So this slide shows a journey in 3 phases. First one from 1995 to 2012 was our first one, past one investigate and turnaround phase. And after a decade of conflicts, and our utility was in a destroy, was in a destruction because of the civil war, internal war in our country. And the phase was about establishing the root and the principle for growth. And it was less about high-tech data and more about establishing a foundation, culture of integrity, public service, and also a zero-tolerance policy for corruption. And this cultural foundation was the first and the most important strategic step that we have to consider the turnaround to be happen in order to make sure that we have, a water for our country. And the first 2 from 2012 to 2025 represent our present, and this is where we focus on our development management, our performance indicators. That data is very important for us to make a strategy. Without data, you don't know where to go, you don't know your weaknesses. So this is where data truly enter the picture, and we professionalize our operation, expanded our network, and adopted our guide principle under the word of water for all. And if you look into at the first 3, our future from 2025 to 2030, which is our goal, and it is one of the challenges that we face right now. But we are moving forward to a more digital efficiency and autonomous utility. And our strategy is now focused on adapting to new pressure, rapid urban growth, of course, climate change, and the undeniable impacts of the changing climate. And this timeline show an evolution from building a culture to building performance to now building a resilience. And this is the important slide presentation where we speak about the data and KPI. This slide is the data part of our talk, and it shows the result of the strategy and the cultural shift that I just mentioned. And you don't need to read every number, but I want to draw your attention just to a few key transformations from 1993 to 2023. If you look at the service coverage, it's grown from just only 20% of the city now to 88% in terms of the geographical area. But in terms of population access, it's almost 100%. And the supply duration, we went from 10 hours in the past, 10 hours a day, and now to reliable 24/7. And another one is a collection ratio. This is one of the that I am most proud of my management, that we moved from 48, meaning that we failed to collect the payment for more than half of our water, and now it's to a world-class 99.9%. And finally, if you look at the staff performance efficiency, our staff per 1,000 connection, we went from 22 down to 2.8. And these numbers are not just data points, but they tell a story. And they are the result of the clear strategy, a very good leadership, and a very effective management that we have our, executive to drive and to make a strategy. And this efficiency did not come from a tool. It's come from a leadership that I just mentioned that set a clear vision. And it's come from massive continuous investment in our staff competencies, because we consider that human resource and the human capacity is one of the biggest factors that we have to keep in mind. And we train our teams, we empower them, and we hold them accountable. And this data here is the proof of the strategy that, not the strategy itself, but it's some things that, we keep doing. Yes, we're on the right side. And so how do we build this strategy? This is where the tool and the diagnostic, like one of the key of methodology, become a critical. And thanks for AgroParistic for giving me the opportunity to be there and learning how to make a strategic. And this slide show a simplified process that we apply from from first zero. It all starts with sharing data. Without data, you don't have anything to discuss. But you have to make sure that your data is good enough, is reliable enough for further discussion and to make a plan. So we have to be honest and transparent with our own performance. And first two, we use diagnostics tool according to World Bank guideline for water utility turnaround framework. And this slide lists a few that the concept is what matters, and we use this framework to get a 360 degrees, an objective look at our utility, where we are strong, and where is our weaknesses, and where is our challenge that we have to consider to make a plan in order to overcome those challenges in order to improve our performance. And first two, this is the most important step that we use this tool for strategic construction. We don't just admire the diagnosis, but we use it to model scenarios, prioritize investment, what are the most important investment that we have to do right now, and of course to build a concrete action plan for a few years, for 5 years, or for 10 years, etc. And finally, phase three, we report and project this strategy and holding ourselves accountable to our goals, that everyone take responsibility and everyone has to take action in order to make sure that our plan is achieved. So this framework is what allows us to translate our data into a plan. But again, a tool is just a framework, and it is the discussion, the tool that facilitates, and the difficult conversation, that what if scenario debated by our management and technical teams that create the real strategy. And now we go to the most important slide, that this slide is the perfect example of a diagnosis tool in action. And according to our master plan from 2021 to 2030, we speak about some component that needs to be improved, and we have to look at what are the components that are our strengths. So this radar charts show our performance across 27 different operational areas. And if you look at the inner cycle, the green light, it's referred to the performance in 2016, and the outer shape, which is the dark green, it shows about our latest performance in 2023. So you can see visually see that the massive improvement in innovation and technology, in information technology, and also in real-time monitoring, and especially in human resource and learning. But the most strategic part of this chart is on the right one, that the tool helps us categorize every single one of 27 functions into 3 boxes. The first one is to maintain. So we have to look at the areas where we are performing at an international standard, but we have to keep maintain, not to downgrade or not to stop taking action. And the second one is to be improved, to look at the area where we are good at, but not yet great. And we have to consider more actions to keep doing in order to improve this area to be more, at the international standard or at the excellent standard. And the last one is the action that needed. We have to look at the area that our clear prioritize for investment and, of course, the capacity building. So this is what from data to strategy look like in the practice, and it's not a complex report. It's simple visual map that every department manager can understand, and it tells us exactly where to focus our limited resources, our training, and our management attention. And of course, a computer can generate this chart, but without data, without a competent team, without a strong leadership, we don't know where to go. And so to conclude my presentation and the first-hand experience I want to share from PPWSA is this. Of course, data and tools are important, and they are the flashlight that help you see the path, and they give you the honest diagnosis. But a flashlight is useless without someone to hold it, without someone to understand what is illuminating, and what someone who has the courage to walk the path. Of course, it is the ability of the top management. And The real transformation, the kind that take a utility from 20% coverage to 24/7 service, does not come from a software or a tool. Of course, it comes from the leadership and the mindset of the manager to care about the people in the city that we provide the water service. And it comes from a good management that creates a culture of accountability and the public service, turning a strategy into a slide, into a clean, safe, and a reliable water for our people in our city. So this is all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Huge round of applause to Samawan. That's fantastic. Samawan, if you could stay on there for a couple of minutes, I'm sure folks have like burning questions.
I don't expect questions.
Okay.
Okay,
If you,
All right.
And if you could take 1 second to talk about Agro, what is this program and what is the support that you got from?
All right.
And yeah, how can other utilities maybe, engage? Yeah, if you could provide a little bit of practical guidance on the program.
I would say it because of the partnership between our company and our development partners, and of course the opportunity from my management team. And when we speak about the investment to expand our network, of course in that agreement we have one component that is capacity building. So with that component, our management sent me to Agroparistics to pursue a master degree on the water utility management, to train the managers to be able to see problems, to see the diagnosis, and to build the capability to make a strategic plan. And I took the class in 2021 and 2022 during the COVID-19, and I can say that if I don't have any chance to be in that class, maybe I don't know what is the strategic and what is the tool that we use to make a plan. And of course, first we have to understand our current situation. Where are we now, and what is our weaknesses? And once we have this in mind, and of course to discuss with our team and our management to put the plan, which one is the priority to do. So
Thank you. Questions or anything, comments on this? Okay.
So please tell about more.
How did you double the
How
revenue?
did you double the revenue collection? It's the hardest part.
Well, that was the time that I was not in that organization yet. But what I can see from my experience is that to make sure that we have a revenue collection 100%, I think we have to do whatever it takes to make sure that all the customers has a connection meters. That is the first important things. So we have to make sure that every household has to install the connection meters. So that is one of the most important that we keep, tracking on the consumption that the customer use. And of course, it's kind of require a lot of investment. We have to buy 1,000 of the connections. We have to, convince people to use our water. We have to convince people that if they steal water, they have to, face with the fine, with the illegal activity from our local authority. And I think there will be more, but this is only that I can tell you.
Thank you. My understanding from the history of PPWSA is that there was a big jump in performance in the first part that you identified, the period until 2012. And then there has been, still improvement and consolidation, I would say. And my understanding is that in the first part, there was an important role played by not-for-profit partnerships for capacity development. At the time, they were not called WOPs, maybe twinning arrangements. Could you possibly elaborate a little bit on this? Because my understanding is that there was a waves and waves of twinning arrangements with different utilities from different countries with support from Japan and other donors. And I believe that the executive manager of PPWSA also gave a keynote speech at one of the GWOP congresses. So could you possibly elaborate on that story of the strategic importance of peer-to-peer, operator-to-operator, not-for-profit partnerships for capacity development? Thanks.
Thank you for the question, and I think this question is quite difficult because it back in the past where it happens between 1993 and 2012, which require a very good leadership. And without leadership, we don't know how to, make this turnaround. And I think this question I possibly answer you next time, because it's the time that I did not, know much about the experience. So sorry.
Hi, good morning. My name is Abubakar Jallo. I'm from Mali. I want to ask, I've been working in the utility. I know that resources are very limited. If an area is in need of action and for your understanding, the budget is really out of your capacity, and then what you need to do is not within the utility, what do you do if you don't have enough resources to tackle and then to take the necessary actions?
All right, thank you for the question. And first, I would say that without money, we cannot do anything, right? So, and of course, it just remind me to his question that, and of course, the first one is to make sure that utility require autonomous, responsibility from your national authority. If you cannot take control of your own utility, if you have the political interference, maybe you cannot make any decision to improve your utility. And of course, it comes with the developing partners. You have to do whatever it takes to build collaboration with the developing partners in order to, request for some budgets, for some investment in order to make an action in our utility. And I would say that if without any budget, to my experience, I don't know where else to go. So, and of course, you have to, build a collaboration and, of course, connection with the developing partners.
So I was wondering how you were able to reduce your staff per 1,000 connection from 22 in 1993 to about 2.18, I think, currently.
All right, thank you for the question. In our organization, we have our culture and our human resource policy. I would say that people are working in our organization. They also receive their on-job training. So what skill that they are doing? Of course, they also learning from their partners, from their management team, and like I said before, that in our investment plan, it also generate a plan for the human resource development plan that we send our people to oversee to gain more skill, and of course to to join the short-term training course. And we're doing this. We're doing like kind of on-job training and send people to oversee to get more training, to build more knowledge, and to get more experience from other utility in the world. And then this is one of the way that we can, have a very good staff per 1,000 connection ratio.
Awesome. I'll take this last one, and then we have the final presentation for the day.
Sorry, thank you. My name is Kees de Jong. I work for Hamburg Water Utility. I just want to comment on the diagram. We also prepared similar diagrams for utilities in Egypt. And I see that the number 3, the ranking of 3 is like the standard. And I observed that in the technical field, the blue area, the right, that in fact you say good is good enough. You do not make Rolls Royces and make things, invest more than necessarily. And you spend a lot of efforts in human resources, data mapping, commercial optimization, so also the low-hanging fruits where you should start making your company financially healthy, which you did as a perfect job. So this is really a perfect example, I think, for a lot of utilities. And the tool, we worked with tools like this where you have slide bars, because the light green, I think, is where you are now, and the dark green is the target for medium term, or the next targets.
No, the dark green is what we are now. Is our current performance. And the
and
light
where
green,
do you want to go to? I mean, in the
and of course we want to go to excellent performance. Of course, we have
to 6. You want to go to 6.
And of course, why not?
We prepared sliders that you have different stages, and you can go from 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 in each of the indicators.
Yeah.
And that's also a very nice tool to use during sessions and training, so participatory sessions. But the tool is perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Saman. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, the final initiative, and then we'd love to see how much more discussions, because I'm sure we also have, I see Odisha here, I'm sure there's a lot of experience from utilities in the room. The last one today is this initiative. It's called the Africa Utility Data Collaborative. It's an initiative that my organization is partnering with AFWASA. It's a water utility association. It's headquartered in Abidjan, in Ivory Coast. Sort of the vision for this came from this sort of a very basic, it said, you don't have to have a lot to get started, right? It goes back to how do we start thinking about building cultures of data use? And maybe start with that as an entry point and then grow from there, right? And we said that means you could be very innovative with very little. And you don't have to have the most fancy asset management softwares or the best, non-revenue, like SCADA. You don't need a lot. You already have something. It could even just be a basic billing software that you're working with. And this goes back to your point, right? Don't start with the money. I mean, you need money. We all need money. But if you had something to show in terms of initiative and ownership, I'm sure there are enough lenders, donors, partners in this room, civil society organizations, that will all come to your utility and say, we want to work with you because we know you can do something amazing, and we'd like to partner, right? And we'd like to give you money. So that sort of was the vision. And we did a very rapid, we worked with a regulator in Kenya called WASREP. It's a water regulator. Not a lot of countries have a dedicated regulatory agency. Kenya is one of them, and I think that provides some really interesting incentives. And we wanted to test this hypothesis that you could start with nothing or very little and still create value, right? So that's the hypothesis we wanted to test. We worked with 8 water utilities. Obviously, the regulator cared about 2 questions. The regulator wanted to see how comparable the data was, because all of these utilities were reporting data, right? And they wanted to know, do I know, are these apples to apples, or can I compare them? And they were really concerned about quality, right? So those are the questions that the regulator cared about. The utilities obviously said, I need to know. I think the biggest thing we heard, and I think this links back to what Faustina said, the biggest challenge that water utilities struggled with is data fragmentation. They had data sitting in so many different spreadsheets, places, like in different computers, even within a single department within the utility, they really struggled to sort of, when you ask them a question on where the data was and how to get the data. And they were really interested in thinking about business intelligence, right? And it all went back to that question I led with, which is, can I make money? Can I save money? And can you give me very practical ways of doing one of those 2 things and tell me how my data can help there? That sort of was the goal. And we said, okay, let's start. And this is the other thing. When we started out and we started talking about, we're going to get utilities to sort of just share whatever they have. And this goes back to the IBNet experience as well, Anna. Everybody said, utilities don't share data, right? Like, nobody's going to share data. You're going to go out, you're going to struggle, you're going to spend months with the utility, you're not even going to get a single data set. But we said, listen, we're not going to ask you, I don't need any KPIs. Give me whatever you have. Like, give me this big, ugly dump. And we said, we'll do the hard work, right? And we will make sure it's secure. The data will all get erased. There was a clear data governance MOU that was signed, which essentially determined how we will engage with these utilities. We got 65 unique data sets, right? And we got that in 3 weeks. Because these utilities saw value. They said, at the end of this, what I will have is finally an integrated system where I can go in, run a simple query, and I'll be able to say, what's going on in terms of billing trends for this zone where I'm supplying water over the last 6 months. And that in itself was enough of an incentive. And I think that this, for me, was the most encouraging part of that experiment when I came out and I say, utilities, if you can make it easy, if you can build trust. A lot of this was trust, right? They wouldn't have shared this just because it was easy. It was also trust. They knew we were working with the regulator. They knew we had a data governance MOU. They knew us from having a long-standing history of having worked with these utilities. So they knew that we're not going to just sell their data or just misuse their data, right? We got 65 unique data sets. And just in a matter, we did this in 6 weeks, right? No sophisticated, we didn't run any, we just ran very basic analysis on their data. And we started by saying, okay, clearly there are lots and lots of gaps in terms of even with the data that you've shared with us that I think need to be addressed. For example, these are utilities that have now been sharing KPIs with the regulator for over a decade. But several of these utilities did not know how many of their customers were dormant versus active. Now, that's important, right? Now, these are the kinds of nuances that we miss out when you don't think of data for operations and improving your own internal operations, but you start thinking of data as something that needs to be reported into a dashboard, right? When you start thinking of aggregates, I think you lose a lot of the texture and the quality of the conversation that you have about data. And something like this was alarming, right, for all of us. We said, we cannot talk about half the metrics if you don't know if the customer that you're actually putting in that database in your denominator is active or dormant. We also could start pointing to patterns, right? Like regions were all aggregated differently for different indicators. Non-revenue water, which is the most commonly reported metric, had very different definitions. The utilities were all working with very different ideas of what but they were all reporting this data. So we could point to a lot of the things, but the beauty of this is to not say all the things that didn't work, because there are lots of things that did work, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But this provides the ability to start thinking about your internal systems and to start thinking about what's missing and what needs to be addressed in a very practical way, right? So you're going back and looking at questions of what do I need to learn about and how I can use it. We could also generate a lot of cool analysis and insights, right? We could show, for instance, let's look at customers who are consuming the most amount of water are also delaying payments or are defaulting on payments the most. That's the riskiest category, right? These are the biggest customers that are also most likely to default. You need to know that. Sorry, these graphs don't do justice, but you need to know that up front. And we could do a lot of this analysis just using basic analysis on billing data, and they had a lot of billing data. I would say 6 out of 8 utilities had a billing software that they were working with, and we could generate a lot of really cool analysis. We could also show examples where we said, listen, the number of leaks that are being reported, there is no correlation between the non-revenue water estimates that you're reporting and the leaks that are getting reported. So either you're not tracking your leaks well enough, or there is something here that needs to be unpacked, right? So it just allows for conversations. So we said, okay, this is clearly encouraging. Now, how do we make something like this more available and engage with more utilities? And that's how we, as of February last year, in collaboration and under the leadership of the Africa Water and Sanitation Utility Association, AFWASA, launched this idea called the Africa Utility Data Collaborative. We're not even a toddler, okay? Like, we launched it last year. We're really figuring stuff out. So one of the things I'd love to hear is all of the things that we could get wrong as we go on this journey. So very much would welcome that feedback. I'll talk about the practical things of what we're planning to do under this, right? So we've launched our engagement with the first cohort. So this year, starting November, we're going to work with 3 utilities first, because we want to kind of keep it manageable so we can learn along the way. We don't know yet on what this is going to look like, what the processes and systems are going to look like. But we're going to work with Yaoundé, Kampala, and Lilongwe. These are the 3 utilities that we're going to start the engagement with. The first piece is we're going to sign a data sharing and governance arrangement, so we know how the data is going to get shared and used. This is a piece that kind of came along the way and was an innovation, which is going back to the piece on capacity, right? Not every utility is going to have the privilege of figuring out how to get a data scientist or a data analyst, set up a university partnership. What you've done is incredible, by the way, right? And I think that's a blueprint I'd like to see if we can talk about or present in more forums. But we said, what if we can hire a local computer science graduate, train that graduate, and deploy that graduate in the utility for a 12-month period? And at the end of 12 months, the utility can say, this is great. I'm going to continue working with him or her because we really need this capacity and nobody else can provide. So it's almost like creating workforce supplement. There are lots of examples of why that fails also, which we're constantly thinking about and then saying, how can we do this well? But the idea is to actually hire a data scientist Ideally, somebody with a background in computer science and statistics, and deploy them at the utility and provide them the training. Obviously, start with where are you? Do a mapping of what are your processes, what systems do you have, what softwares do you have, what is your maturity as is. Start with leadership boot camps, right? And I think we're planning to do our first leadership boot camp at Cameroon at the Water Congress next year with Afwasa, where we'd start with these 3 utility leaders, but maybe bring a small cohort of other utility leaders that are really interested and want to engage and say, can we start sharing examples of what Ghana Water has done? Here's the role model, right? Like let's look at what you did. What was your journey? What were your struggles? Did you have to fight the local mayor? Did you have to fight, different stakeholders? What were some of the risks that you navigated and how you did that well? And we want to really create value, right? Because it's easy for us to kind of do a lot of this soft stuff and walk away from it and say, oh, now you guys go figure it out. But we said we're going to take on a very ambitious goal, which is we are going to try and create an integrated data management system, which means we're not just going to go in and deploy a data scientist and just talk about the how, but we're going to take on the very challenging task of saying, if you have 6 different softwares, 5 different ongoing data collection processes, et cetera, can I use API calls, Excel spreadsheets? Can I start bringing it all together in a single platform? It's going to be challenging. We're going to learn along the way in terms of what that looks like and how we can get more efficiencies built in for subsequent cohorts. Like, is there a way to think about automatic plugins, and are there some standard API calls that work? Is there only 4 or 5 different kinds of, for example, asset management softwares? So we'll get into some of those questions as we go along. But then think about, I think that journey will then allow the utility to say exactly where the gaps are. And we're hoping that this will allow the utility to shop for the right things with the World Bank and with AFDB and ADB, right? Or with the development banks. So then when they are getting into a loan negotiation, they're not just asking for pumps and pipes and infrastructure, but they're able to say, I actually need precisely this kind of a software system because that's the biggest gap, or I need to upgrade my financial management and accounting systems in these ways. We obviously want to publish impact, and right through the journey, I think after the 5th month, once we have an operating version of an IDMS or an integrated data management system, we want to do data clinics, right? Which is, can we work with different staff positions within the water utility to say, oh, let's look at energy costs, let's look at billing data, let's look at non-revenue water, and let's see what are the things we can do with just data points around these, and who are the stakeholders within the utility that'll be interested in engaging with this, and how can we run this sort of role model, this culture of what really Ghana Water has done very successfully, which is looking at data and starting to think about decisions. We are excited to see how we can be more efficient. If it's going to cost us, for example, right now, a 12-month exercise is costing us about $67,000. That's the money that is costing us for a 1-year period for one utility. So I want to be, we're putting that benchmark out because that's the cost of doing all of this. So we're like, how can we get it to $20,000, right, by year 3, right? Like, how can we make it super, to a point where we can, and these are some of the things we want to continue to think about at the back end, which is how do we automate and think about a lot of the analytics and the data integration. What are some of the other things that we can do? But this is the journey we're going to go on. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to struggle a lot. But this is a little bit about the Africa Utility Data Collaborative. Yeah, happy to take questions or just interact. And I'd also love to hear at this point from folks in the room that have ideas, that have experiences that you'd like to share, that you think we could take away from. But Anna, did you want to add? Okay. Oh, sure. Musa, did you also want to add a little bit about the Afwasa thing? Sorry.
Just a few words. Thank you, Deepa. Thank you. For those who don't know Afwasa, Afwasa is the membership association with 3 categories of members: the water and sanitation operators that we call our corporate members. We have the affiliate members who are the private sector people, and we have the individual members. The work that Afwasa is doing with Athena is very, very, very critical for us. We started with, like everybody is doing, by putting in place a benchmarking platform, saying that our members, the utilities, will come bring the data. But data was not coming in. So we have to change the narrative. It is this vision that we have that at the end of the process, that we can have our members be in a benchmarking platform where they can exchange. But without data, without input, we cannot have those exchanges. That is how this discussion, this work we're doing with Athena has started. So we have, this first phase was discussed with, presented by Deepa, funded by the Gate Foundation, to see how are we going to look, to deep dive in the utilities to see what was the issue, the challenges that they are facing to bring us more data in the platform, in the benchmarking platform. So one of the issues that have been shared here is for TINA, Ghana Water is a member of the association, is the fragmented data. So data is everywhere in the services, in the utilities. So we have to create like a value to our members. What value our members can have in the work we're doing. And one of the services that we are providing, as Deepa presented, is this integrated data management that will help the utility to have one tool that will help us help the leaders to see, to help them take decision. If they have the integrated data management platform, that will help them take decision quickly. So the other thing is, challenges that we see is the lack of capacity. Who are the person in the utilities taking care of the data? I think people, the utilities are not investing in that. The only investment they have is come from donors. So we have to work on with the utilities leaders to have this culture of donor, investing on people. And one of the work that Athena is helping us to do is train those people in using the utilities. The other thing is, how are we going to have buy-in from the leaders, from the utility leaders, decision makers, to provide more data, to invest in data? These are also one of the challenges. And the work we are doing in the AUDC will help us generate value, shows that those utilities, those leaders can have value in investing in the AUDC. This is the work we are doing with Athena, and we are very thankful for the support that Athena is bringing to AFWASA in this work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know we're at time. I apologize. I know we started a little bit late. But any comments, reactions, questions, guidance, please?
My name is Benny Sefrimamu. I have worked with Ghana Water Utility for the past 18 years. I am currently doing my PhD with the IHE Institute for Water Education, the biggest water institute. I think part of my, not question per se, but comment has been already answered by Musa. The question I wanted to ask was, what really inspired you to look for, the challenge that we have with this perfect benchmarks and then best practices is that most of the time when they are being designed or these KPIs are used, they sort of like align with the utilities in the north. So maybe they pick the KPIs based on whatever they see with the utilities in the north. But normally these tools are designed for utilities in the south where we have resource constraints. So I was sort of like really interested in what really motivated you to at least look for data that you don't really, it is not so rigid that water utilities themselves in the southern part are already struggling to be able to meet their challenges in delivering water to its population. So it's sort of, it makes it a bit difficult for them to chase after trying to meet these rigid targets and other things. So for them, if you have given them an option to be able to just give any data that they have, for instance, billing data, every utility has a billing data, and then they are, just as Faustina said, it's so easy to get most of the data. Though they are in silos, you have it. But at the end of the day, if they have to maybe try to make it a complete data before they are able to meet a benchmark is sort of difficult. So it is also good that we encourage and use what we readily have to be able to make the best out of it. Thank you. I think I am doing some paper on it, so maybe during the Cameroon this then I'll be able to deliver a speech on that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Any other? I know we're over time. Maybe one more, and then yeah. But also happy to continue these conversations in break.
Yes, thank you. Great presentation, by the way. My name is Joost from the Netherlands. I'm moderating the community of practice on asset management. And I like how you mentioned asset management a few times. And in preparation also for this conference, we've asked ourselves the question, okay, what is asset management? And we are now at the stage that we call it conscious decision making on your assets. So therefore, I was also happy I heard Musa say, okay, the data enables us to make decisions. From my experience in Nairobi, also we collected data there. We started at the point to ask regional managers and directions, okay, what is the decision you need to make? And from there, what type of data do we need to collect? So we started with the type of decision. So I'm really curious, also with your future research at different utilities, if they need to make similar decisions or different decisions. Is it about efficiency tracking of the field staff or other type of decisions? And how do you see this come into your research?
That's a great question. And in fact, we actually started with, so we're approaching this at two ends, right? At one end, we're saying, listen, I'm not even starting, I just want to see what you have, right? Like, let's open the box, let's take off the hood and see what's underneath. But on the other side, I think it's going to be really important to think about how do you want to use this? And that's where your question becomes really relevant and your comment becomes really relevant. And we ran a poll last year with our utilities, and the three top things that they cared about was energy costs. They were very worried about how much they were spending on energy, and they really wanted to manage energy costs. That was like top of mind. I would say that was the number one that we got. So we're like, that's a big one. So let's unpack that, and then think about what kind of data you need, what kind of IoTization you need to do to be able to get that data. What are the costs of even getting the data to do? I mean, the second thing was non-revenue water. Non-revenue water and how to manage and reduce non-revenue water was top of mind. And the third thing was billing efficiencies. These were the top three things that they wanted to say we need to improve billing and then collection efficiency. So first, the number of people that are getting billed actively and then how we're collecting against those bills. So these were just going back to your point. So we're going to think about that a lot as we build out the dashboards and the analytics. Early analytics will be how do we answer those three questions better? And then I'm sure there'll be other use cases that will come up. Awesome. Thank you all. I know we're at time. It's been incredible. I apologize. I really wanted us to have more interaction, but I think these 90-minute formats only allow for so much. But this has been incredible to have you all in the room. We're all here. Anna, me, Musa, Faustina, the group is here. We're happy to stay on for a bit and just engage and chat with folks that are interested to learn more. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you.